Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of ASA Live. Um, uh, I'm James Moran, the General Manager of Apprenticeship Support Australia, and today we're joined by Danielle Buckley, our in-house psychologist with Apprenticeship Support Australia. Danielle's fresh from doing a number of events with our employers talking about this important topic of engaging young people at work and using psychology to help build business and to support young people at work. Danielle, thanks for coming and joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
What we're going to cover today is that whole topic of engaging young people at work and helping employers to build business by getting the most out of their young people and engaging them at work. So, what has changed, Danielle, about the workforce, and why is there a need for businesses to change?
Yeah, it's a really good question, but I think what we've started to see really in the last 5 years is that we're very much embedded in the gig economy now, fourth industrial revolution. And that means that it's an environment that's really made up of these choice workers and contract and project workers. That's one thing. The other thing we're noticing are the skills of people in the workforce. They've changed. And that puts a lot of pressure on businesses because when people have a lot of choice and there's that rise of the gig economy, for employers, they really need to start thinking about, well, how can I create a great place to work? And how can I make sure that people in my workplace are really developing the skills they need for their business to thrive?
Okay, so I imagine as you start to talk us through this afternoon that some of our employers will probably have some questions on how you might be able to help give them some advice. So all of the employers out there, please don't hesitate to send through your questions. Just note them in the comments section, and as we get the questions, we'll cover them towards the end. So employers and businesses are going to need to change. Why do these changes pose challenges for employers then, Danielle?
I think a lot of employers are at a stage now where they realise that in order to engage their young staff and to move their business from surviving to thriving, that they really need to think differently and be open to opportunities. So a lot of employees now need to start thinking about how they can make their workplace more attractive. And we know that a lot of young people are looking for opportunities for coaching and mentoring in the workplace and opportunities to use their skills and grow their skills. And we know with the change in the skills, so 30 years ago, a workplace is made up of routine cognitive and routine manual tasks, whereas today it's more about the non-routine cognitive and non-routine manual.
Okay, so from our perspective at Apprenticeship Support Australia, the apprenticeship and the traineeship model fits quite nicely in there because of how supportive such a program is for bringing new people into an organisation. So it really does support employers giving some thought to that model when they're thinking about recruiting young people because of that support. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. So I think one of the things we've been doing in the events is providing employers with education around how to coach and mentor young people, giving them space to think and solve problems, and both formal and informal coaching on the job. And we know that just by the employer providing 1 hour of coaching a week, that improves engagement, and engagement improves retention. But obviously as well with Apprenticeship Support Australia, we have access to our mentors. And those mentors now are an additional resource that we're providing to employers, and they're allowing further coaching and mentoring, which is having a huge impact on our retention and our retention rates, because we know that they're higher than other people's.
Fantastic. So, we talk about coaching and mentoring, but what does that actually mean? If I'm being coached, what will I see?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, when traditionally in a workplace, people were very much about having supervisors and managers, where people did the same thing every day and a manager or supervisor would tell them what to do. But what we're seeing now, what coaching is all about, is allowing people to learn and grow, taking that approach where you're asking young people, how will you approach this task? Demonstrate how you think through the steps of what's involved. What opportunities are there? What do you know? What don't you know? How can you reach those conclusions? And we talked a lot with employees at the event around using that GROW model. So setting a goal, identifying the reality, identifying options, and then wrapping up. And we know that with this generation in the workplace as well, they are hungry to learn. They come with a wealth of knowledge, from their expertise in digital literacy to their understanding of how to do things. And they want to learn how to develop those skills. So I think employers taking that approach and taking time just to ask questions and show them what the opportunities are really helps.
Okay. So it really could mean an improvement to the process of bringing someone on board then. So how would you suggest that improvement might take place?
Yeah, well, I think when we're onboarding any young person in the workforce, one of the most important things is being clear about the expectations of what we require from those young people. We have on our website a ways of working agreement, which I highly recommend if you haven't downloaded it. Any employer downloads the ways of working agreement. And really, we've seen with a lot of young people entering the workforce today, many haven't got work experience already. So when they come to an employer for an apprenticeship or a traineeship, quite often it's their first job. So an employer's task is even harder because they're not just teaching them the skills of, what that trade involves, but they're teaching them employability skills and how to be work ready. But the ways of working agreement is a really fantastic opportunity for the employer to sit down with the apprentice or trainee and say, hey, these are all the things I expect of you. From the time you start to what you need to wear, to how you address me, your rules around mobile phones. And then they sign it at the bottom. Then they flip it over. And then there's a conversation where the employee can say, and now this is what you can expect from me.
Right. Yep.
And having that open conversation early on, because we know lots of young people entering the workforce have views about what they want. And when we can build relationships, again, we know building relationships and social support is a really important aspect of retention in a role.
So I guess it's like most relationships, that communication is really key, isn't it? And being clear from the outset as to what you expect as an employer can help overcome some problems later on, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And if employers aren't clear about their expectations, and if employers don't invest in developing young people, they'll leave.
Yep.
And we're seeing that with the amount of choice workers growing in Australia. And I think one of the important points to mention in our youth census last year for Skills Road, we found that most young people actually want to work, and there are a huge amount of jobs available in Australia at the moment. And so if an employer doesn't provide a great place to work and doesn't invest in a young person's development, providing coaching, mentoring, education, providing that link between what they learn at TAFE and what they can do on the job, then a young person will leave because there are other jobs available.
Yeah, so then you've got the cost rather than getting the benefit of having the person there. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so really we do have to approach it differently.
Absolutely.
So what are the problems we have to tackle before young people choose a career path?
I think that's a really good question, and I think we all have a growing responsibility to start changing the shape of our career conversations. I think career conversations need to happen earlier, but I think career conversations need to be more exploratory and more high promotion in the vet space. So we know that most kids still take a university pathway.
Right.
And my big question to that is why? Why would you pursue a pathway that might not suit your skill set? And we know that the vet space provides an incredible pathway. So I think we have a responsibility to talk about what options are available, and we can use Skills Road to do that. We've got the new career quiz on Skills Road as well. So building on the research from the Foundations of Young Australian report, we've identified the 7 skill sets that make up the Australian workforce today. And I'd encourage young people to get on there, complete this 5-minute free quiz to find out what their skill set is, and then start exploring, well, based on my skill set, what suits me? What are my options? What are my possible pathways?
So they'll be more likely to choose a job then if they understand themselves a bit better, is what you're saying there, I guess. So,
and understand their strengths and understand, what role is going to bring the best out of them. Because we know that if somebody takes on a job because mum and dad have said that they have to, and they have no motivation to do that role, when times get tough, it's going to be hard to stick at it. But you do something you like and you enjoy and you see value in doing, then it's an easier transition.
That's good advice for any young person that might be listening, that's for sure. Go with your strengths, hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably a good time to remind employers who are listening in today, if you've got any questions, please get them coming through in the comment section there on Facebook. I'm sure we'll have some time towards the end of the catch up today. Danielle, you mentioned the Apprenticeship Support Australia's Skills Road website. We're getting a lot of people using that now, and you mentioned the new career quiz. How does that career quiz work, and how can it help employers with achieving their recruitment goals?
Yeah, really, really good point. That again, we're seeing with a lot of employers are hungry to put young people on, But one of the most important things I think employees need to start thinking about is making sure they actually get the right person for the job early on, you know, and that saves them a lot of heartache down the line, but also make sure they've got a great fit. So the career quiz not only looks at your skill set, but it also looks at your work values. It takes 5 minutes, it's free, and I would encourage every employer to get a young person to complete the career quiz as part of their recruitment process. So, you know, for example, if you're running a plumbing business and you want to put a new plumbing apprentice on, there's a skill set in the career quiz that is a handicrafter. And this skill set refers to somebody who likes to use their hands, likes to do practical tasks. And so if you get somebody that would, you know, prefer just to do process and repetition, as opposed to perhaps a handicrafter role, maybe that person's the wrong hire. So we really want employees to start applying a bit of psychology and an evidence-based practice to the way they recruit, and that's going to make their job a lot easier when it comes to coaching and mentoring, engaging, and just educating that young person throughout their apprenticeship.
So I know some of our employers are actually using that career quiz as part of the process. So when they're bringing people in to do interviews, and before that they're asking candidates to complete the career quiz and bring the results with them. Was that something you'd recommend in terms of giving more information from the outset?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a few things can happen. When they complete the career quiz, they can email the employer their results. They can bring the results with them. But what we've also done for the student or young person completing it is we've written a series of interview questions that they can then go and ask the employer, just to give them a bit more information about what they can do that relates directly to their skill set and perhaps their work values as well. Because we know, even if two people have a similar skill set, it's important that they know what they want from work, and if they've got two jobs that are the same, what environment and what culture is going to suit them better.
I guess if our employers are more prepared as well, they're thinking about the strengths they're looking for, they would appear more organised to candidates when they're coming in, because often some of our candidates can have a couple of options when they're going through the recruitment process, can't they? So
absolutely,
it's much about finding that match between employer and apprentice and trainee at the time of recruitment. So.
Absolutely, and it really is important that employers know what sort of apprentice they want to put on, because with the amount of changes and opportunities and pathways that are now available for apprenticeships and traineeships particularly, sometimes it's worth a conversation with one of the industry consultants to just really assess, well, what am I after? You know, do I really need this, or do I need one of the new options that are available? And I think that's a productive conversation as well, followed on from the skill set.
Yeah, good. Well, that career quiz sounds like a really valuable tool, and I guess you'd probably suggest that employers could use it themselves to start with, get a sense of where their strengths are, or really give them an idea of what tool it is and how it works, and it's all been based on psychology, the results that are coming out of that. So
absolutely, and it takes 5 minutes. So, you know, for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you? You know, if you've got access to this information that's going to help you in the long run, why wouldn't you take the opportunity?
So make use of that career quiz is one of the big things that are coming out of today. So, Danielle, what's the importance of job seekers understanding their true skill set?
Well, you know, like we were saying, by understanding exactly what your skills are, you can make more informed choices. One of our goals here, you know, at ASA is really to make Australia a better place. You know, and by doing that, we are helping young people move from school and into meaningful career pathways and getting post-school qualifications. And we want to do that, and we want to do it really well. So the more information a young person can know about who they are and what might suit them, the more meaningful career pathways, you know, decisions they can make.
Definitely. Oh, that sounds great. And once employers are in the job, what can employers do to keep them motivated, satisfied, and ultimately increase their retention rates? You touched on this a little bit before, but can you elaborate some more on that one?
Well, again, we know from our Skills Road Youth Census, the thing that young people want most from employers is coaching and mentoring. So I think that's, you know, the number one investment that employers need to make, finding time for those conversations. But that also sits quite nicely with making time to build relationships. And I think that's a big change that we've seen in the workforce as well. And I'm sure there's lots of employers who are listening in today who are finding that they're spending more and more time in people management and solving people problems and what they feel just actually doing tasks that they need to get through. And we've certainly seen that change in the workplace. So the other thing that employers can do is really to invest in building relationships with their staff. And if you have a young person that you're working with, or you have an apprentice or a trainee in your business, get to know them. Get to know them. Understand, who are the significant people in their life? Who's the biggest advocates for their career? Who else has a career like theirs? What inspired them to take this role? What do they love most about their job? What frustrates them? What are the things they enjoy the least? And I think by building those relationships, you build a culture of trust in your business. And that, influences our openness, our honesty. And it's very different perhaps to what the workforce was like, certainly when I started work. And people really went to work, they'd put their head down and got on with it. There wasn't a lot of sharing. So make time to talk and build those relationships. That's what young people want, and it's really an investment in our business. Might not see the bottom line straight away, but you'll see a long-term investment with your retention. And then ultimately, if people are more engaged, they're more productive, and then your business is more profitable. So again, another no-brainer for me.
And I guess some of our employers are probably thinking right now, gee, where will I find the time for all this? I'm running a business, I've got to satisfy customers and all the rest of it. But I guess your message is, if you invest that time now, you're more likely to keep people in the business, to grow them, to develop them, to be able to, do the work that the manager or the employer might be doing in the future, developing them towards that goal. So
absolutely. And again, coming back to the science of when an employee is engaged. So when an employee is engaged, they turn up to work and they feel committed and connected to what they do every day. And when they feel that, they put in more discretionary effort. So when, it's typical finishing time, are they more likely to leave and run straight out the door, or finish that task and service that client? And people are more engaged, they're more creative, they're more flexible, they're more open, they build better relationships. And I think every employer listening will agree that that's the sort of person that they want. But unless we invest that time, initially, it's hard. It really is hard to build that engagement.
I think the key, these things don't just happen. What you're saying to us today is that our employers need to invest the time to make that happen, because it will pay dividends for them in the future, and they'll have a better time with their trainee or their apprentice because they've got more trust there as well. So,
absolutely.
Daniel, this one's a tricky one. Do you think young people today are adequately prepared for the workforce?
That is a tricky question. I'm gonna take the consultant's answer here, and I'm gonna say a little of column A and a little of column B. Look, I think we really have an opportunity to harness the diversity that we have in our workplace at the moment. I think in order to do that, I think a lot of young people come to the workplace and they're lacking some really essential skills that are needed in the workplace. A lot of young people, as I touched on earlier, don't have a lot of experience working before, and that puts pressure on employers. But I also think a lot of young people come to the workplace with huge amounts of knowledge in essential skills like digital literacy, for example, and technology, that when employers start to embrace and learn from them, that too can enhance their business. And in some of the employer events that we had recently, we heard some fantastic stories from employers who are harnessing those skills of young people in getting them to run their Instagram accounts or their Facebook pages. And we had one employee saying she has a salon with 10 apprentices and they all have an online Facebook group as a way of communicating.
Wow, okay.
Closed group just to them, but they share, the work they're most proud of on there, and they communicate notices and information. So are young people prepared? I think, yes, in some regards, they've got a lot that they can bring to the workplace and a lot that, when utilised and leveraged well, can help employers grow. On the downside, I think, there's still some challenges when young people come to the workforce because of their lack of, job readiness skills. And that requires a bit of extra effort on the part of employers. But again, I'm going to come back to using the career quiz, because if you have the right hire and someone who's motivated to work in the job, it makes their job a lot easier.
So that's the skillsroad.com.au career quiz that we're really encouraging people to use.
Absolutely.
At this point of the catch up today, it's important if employers do have questions. We're moving towards the end of our seminar today, please send them through. We've got a little bit of time to handle some extra questions, so please send them through in the comments section there. Danielle, you've spoken a fair bit today about engagement and how we do that, and using Skills Road to do that, and the career quiz. As we are nearing the end of our seminar, what do you think is the most important takeaway from everything that we've discussed today?
Look, I think the one thing I'd really like employers to take away from this is to be really open-minded and curious.
Mm-hmm.
Be open-minded about how you can do things even better. Be curious about what your apprentice or trainee can add and bring to your workplace. And again, we had an example from a group of electrical company, and they said to their apprentices, they said, you know what, I'm going to give you a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is that over the next week, I want you all to try and improve a process or a way we do business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, you know, that's enabling and building those amazingly important enterprise skills like, you know, critical thinking and problem solving.
Yep.
And they had a young person come back and create an app to quote jobs.
Oh, fantastic.
And then they started using that as part of their business as usual processes.
Mm-hmm.
And they just said they've saved us time. We would never have thought of it. We didn't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when employers are open and curious and embrace the diversity and they harness those opportunities, you know, we can see great results. There's certainly times where it's frustrating, we don't get what we want,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's more opportunities than there are challenges.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. So it's embracing that, making the time to engage with their people and embracing the diversity, and look for the opportunities that young people are going to bring when they do come into the businesses. Yeah. We've got a really good question here from one of our employers. Do you think small and large businesses face the same problems when it comes to retaining staff?
That's a really good question. Well, sadly, we know based on the statistics that an apprentice is more likely to complete if they're coming from a big business. And the reason for that is because of all the factors that we've spoken about before. So a lot of big businesses have those additional HR departments, the structured processes, the structured induction programs. But one of the things we've been really committed to is to make sure we can bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that a big business will have, those with regard to induction, recruitment, coaching and managing, we have created the same resources and put them on the ASA website for small businesses to use.
Great.
So if you are a small business and you're listening and you're thinking, you know, I don't have those induction processes, I don't know how to coach and mentor, and, you know, many people don't, because lots of people who run a business are technical experts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and so then having to all of a sudden switch into relationship management and coaching mode is a completely different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage every employer to look on to the Apprenticeship Support Australia website, go to the employers part, and you'll find guidelines, and there's a whole lot of resources on there for you to use around induction, coaching and mentoring, questions to ask interview phase as well. So don't hesitate and use the resources.
Mm-hmm. So really, our small businesses have got no excuse. The resources are there to use those tools, to go online onto apprenticeshipsupportaustralia.com.au and download those resources. The one that appealed to me the most was that commitment you're getting from your young person. Really get agreement on what your expectations are up front, so that you we're all on the same page when you move forward and start to develop them. So,
and that's been really successful. We had an employer come to one of our events this time who came last time, and they came just to tell us that they've implemented that tool, and it's been hugely successful. So, I would really encourage that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have another question here. Will we be sharing the URL for the career quiz link and the employee working agreement?
Okay, sure. Well, we can definitely put that on the comment section of the Facebook Live. But for those of you that are listening, the career quiz is at skillsroad.com.au. Really easy. As soon as you click onto the website, you'll be able to see it. And the ways of working agreement is the agreement I was referring to, and that's on the Apprenticeship Support Australia website. Again, if you pop that into Google, you'll easily be able to access it, but we'll also make sure we put the link up in the comments page of the Facebook Live event.
Fantastic. I think we've got a couple more questions that are on their way through, but we are nearing short of time. So if you've got any last minute questions, please get them through now. Daniel, it's been great having you here today, talking to us about what you found. And I know working with employers in all the regions you've been visiting in Queensland, Canberra and Sydney, you've actually got a lot out of that engagement with the employers and seeing that there are a lot of similar concerns in the space of working with youth. So, yeah, it's fantastic that we've got you here with us today. One of the questions that I've got now is, how do you motivate an apprentice who thinks he knows it all and won't listen? Gosh, that's a classic question.
Yeah, and I've had a couple of those questions over the last week with all the events that we've done. And, I'm going to come back to that C word that I talked about before, coaching, because, I think coaching really provides an opportunity for you never to tell and always to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we're coaching and we're saying things like, how do you approach this task?
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through the steps that you would take and why you would do this over another thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and we had an employer actually say it was funny that once he started taking that approach, that his apprentice realised he didn't actually know the answer. So he didn't have to tell him anymore that he didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
So I would start using those tools, and
Mm-hmm.
I would start using those phrases
Mm-hmm.
as well. And if anyone's interested, there is a guideline for coaching on the website also. But the other point I'll make is that in a lot of cases, I think we also need to remember that our apprentices in many cases are still really young.
Mm-hmm.
And while people can be very committed to work and at times not committed, age is a factor sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be mindful of the fact that that a lot of our apprentices are, still teenagers or in their early 20s in some stages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Daniel, we might wrap it up there. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving your insights. Some of the key things there and the resources our employers will be able to get from the ASA website as well as from skillsroad.com.au. Our employers should also remember that we have a jobs board on skillsroad.com.au and they can be engaging with that to lodge their vacancies, to access candidates who are using skillsroad.com.au now. So thanks very much for your insight. It's always nice having you working with us and to help our employers. For you, our employers out there, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and stay on the lookout for further events like this that'll be due soon. Thank you very much.